The fluorescent lights of Westfield Mall in Atlanta buzzed softly as seven-year-old twins Emma and Ethan raced through the crowded corridor, their mother Sarah trailing behind with shopping bags dragging from her tired arms. It was a typical Saturday afternoon. Families weaving between stores, teenagers clustered around the food court, the scent of cinnamon rolls wafting through the air. But what happened next would shatter their ordinary weekend and change their lives forever. Emma stopped abruptly near the fountain, her small hand gripping her brother's arm. A tall man with graying temples stood alone, staring at his phone, his worn leather jacket hanging loosely on his shoulders. Something inexplicable pulled at her chest, a feeling she couldn't name, wouldn't understand for years to come. Before Sarah could catch up, before anyone could stop them, both children broke into a run. They crashed into the stranger's legs, wrapping their arms around him in a fierce embrace that startled shoppers nearby. The man froze, his phone clattering to the polished floor. His hands trembled as they hovered over the children's heads, and when Sarah finally reached them, breathless and mortified, she looked up into a face she thought she'd never see again. "Michael?" Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "If you're loving this story of impossible reunions and the instincts that connect us across time and distance, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss more incredible true stories that prove love never truly disappears. We're on our way to 10,000 subscribers, and your support means everything to our community of story lovers." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Michael Thompson, the man who'd walked out of Sarah's life 8 years ago, 3 months before she discovered she was pregnant, stood in the middle of Westfield Mall with two children clinging to him like he was a life raft in a storm. His eyes, the same deep brown that Emma had inherited, filled with tears that he couldn't control. "Sarah," he breathed, the name coming out like a prayer. These are your children," she finished, her voice hollow with shock and something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Emma and Ethan, they're 7. The twins, sensing the tension crackling between the adults, slowly released their grip on Michael's legs. Ethan looked up at his mother with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy, why did we hug him?" "I don't know why, but I had to." Emma nodded vigorously, her pigtails bouncing. "It felt like coming home," she whispered, articulating something that defied her 7 years of experience with the world. Michael sank to his knees on the mall floor, not caring about the stares from passing shoppers, not caring about anything except the two small faces before him. Research suggests that parental bonds can transcend conscious recognition, that children possess an instinctive awareness of biological connections. But knowing the science doesn't prepare you for the reality, for the moment when your abandoned children somehow recognize you in a crowd of strangers. "I'm your father," he said softly, reaching out tentative fingers to touch Emma's cheek. "I know you don't know me, and I have no right to even speak to you, but I'm your dad." Sarah felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. For 8 years, she'd been both mother and father, working double shifts as a pediatric nurse to provide for her twins, telling them bedtime stories where the hero was always a single mom who could do anything. She'd buried her grief and rage so deep that sometimes she forgot it existed. But here, in the middle of the mall's Saturday chaos, it all came flooding back. The morning she woke up to an empty apartment and a note that said only, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." "You left," she said, and the words carried the weight of 8 years of single parenting, of midnight fevers and school plays attended alone, of birthday parties where other kids asked why their father never came. Michael's face crumpled. "I know. God, Sarah, I know. And I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. But please, can we talk? Somewhere? Anywhere?" The twins looked between their parents, this woman who'd been their entire world, and this man who somehow felt essential despite being a complete stranger. Ethan's small hand found Michael's, and the gesture shattered something in all three adults. "The coffee shop," Sarah heard herself saying, pointing to a Starbucks 30 feet away. "We'll talk. But Michael, if you hurt them, if you disappoint these kids, I will make sure you regret ever walking back into our lives." They settled into a corner booth, the twins sandwiched between their parents, creating a strange tableau of instant family. Emma ordered a hot chocolate, and Michael noticed how she held the cup with both hands, just like his mother used to. Ethan kept sneaking glances at him, as if afraid he might disappear again. I was 23 when I left, Michael began, his coffee untouched and cooling. 23 and terrified. We'd been together 2 years, Sarah, and I loved you. God, I loved you so much it scared me. But I was an addict. Sarah's breath caught. She'd known he drank, knew he occasionally used, but she'd been young and in love, and convinced she could fix him. Pills mostly, he continued, his voice cracking. Started with a back injury, ended with me stealing from your purse to feed a habit that was eating me alive. The night before I left, I stood in our bedroom and watched you sleep, and I realized I was going to destroy you. Destroy us. So I ran. You could have told me, Sarah whispered, aware of the twins' attentive silence. We could have gotten you help. I was a coward, Michael said simply. I wrote that pathetic note and drove to my brother's place in Nashville. Spent the next 3 years in and out of rehab, relapsing, getting clean, relapsing again. It wasn't until I hit absolute rock bottom, homeless, withdrawing in an alley behind a gas station, that something clicked. A social worker found me, got me into a program that actually stuck. Emma leaned against his arm, a gesture so natural it made Sarah's eyes sting. Are you sick now? The little girl asked with the brutal honesty of children. No, sweetheart, Michael said, and Sarah noticed his hand trembling as he stroked Emma's hair. I've been clean for 4 years. I'm a substance abuse counselor now, helping other people who are fighting the same battles I fought. But Emma, Ethan, I need you both to understand something. Being sick doesn't excuse what I did. I abandoned your mother when she needed me most. I wasn't there when you were born, wasn't there for your first steps or first words or any of the 1,000 moments that make a life. But you're here now, Ethan said with the simple logic of a 7-year-old. That's what Mommy always says. It's never too late to start over. Sarah closed her eyes, hearing her own words reflected back at her. How many times had she told her children that everyone deserves second chances, that mistakes don't define you, that growth and redemption are always possible? Now the universe was forcing her to live those principles, and it felt impossibly hard. Why are you in Atlanta? She asked, changing the subject before the emotion overwhelmed her. Last I heard, you were in Nashville. I moved here 6 months ago, Michael admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Got a job at Crossroads Recovery Center downtown. Sarah, I tried to find you so many times over the years, but you'd moved, changed your number, and I figured that was your right, to start fresh without me haunting you. We've been here 3 years, Sarah said quietly. I took a position at Children's Healthcare. Better pay, better schools for the twins. Michael laughed bitterly. We've been in the same city for 6 months. 6 months of me walking these streets, shopping at these stores, and I never knew you were here. Never knew I had children living miles away. That's destiny, Emma announced with absolute certainty. Mrs. Patterson says destiny means things happen for a reason. We were supposed to find you today. The adults had no response to that. How do you explain to a child that life is random chaos, that there are no grand designs, when their innocent hug in a crowded mall has just reunited a fractured family? Sarah looked at Michael, really looked at him for the first time since the collision. The boy she'd loved had been replaced by a man carrying visible scars, both physical and emotional. But there was also something new in his eyes, clarity, sobriety, and a bone-deep exhaustion that came from clawing your way back from hell. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said honestly, ignoring the twins' presence because they deserved truth, not comfortable lies. You broke something in me when you left, Michael. I had to become someone completely different just to survive. I can't just forget that. I'm not asking you to forget, Michael replied, his brown eyes steady on hers. I'm not even asking you to forgive me, though I hope someday you might. What I'm asking, what I'm begging for, is a chance to know them, to be their father, even if it's just supervised visits, even if it's just an hour a week. They're my children, Sarah, and I know I have no right to them, but I'm asking anyway. The twins sat frozen, sensing that their future was being decided in this coffee-stained booth. Emma's hand crept into Michael's larger one, And that single gesture, that unconscious claim of connection, made Sarah's decision for her. Okay, she heard herself saying, but we do this my way, on my terms. You want to be their father? You earn it. Every single day. No disappearing, no broken promises, no half-hearted efforts. You show up, Michael. You show up and you stay. I will, he promised. And Sarah recognized the steel in his voice, the sound of a man who'd fought for his sobriety and won, who understood the value of commitment in a way his younger self never could. I'll show up every day for the rest of my life if you let me. They exchanged phone numbers, Michael's hands shaking so badly that Sarah had to type her contact information into his phone herself. They agreed to meet the following Saturday at Piedmont Park, neutral territory where the twins could play, while the adults navigated this impossible situation. As they prepared to leave, Ethan tugged on Michael's jacket. Will you really come back? He asked, and the fear in his voice cut through all three adults like a knife. You promise? Michael knelt down eye level with his son. I promise you, Ethan, I will be at Piedmont Park next Saturday at 2 o'clock, and the Saturday after that, and the one after that, for as long as you and your sister want me there. I'm not going anywhere ever again. That night, after tucking the twins into bed and fielding 1,000 questions about their newfound father, Sarah sat alone in her kitchen with a glass of wine she didn't drink. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. I won't waste it, I promise. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Don't thank me. Thank your children. They chose you before they even knew who you were. The following Saturday arrived wrapped in October sunshine. Sarah drove to Piedmont Park with the twins bouncing excitedly in the back seat, their energy fueled by a week of constant questions about their father. She'd barely slept, running through worst-case scenarios where Michael didn't show up, where she'd have to watch her children's faces crumble with disappointment. But he was already there when they arrived, sitting on a bench near the playground with a soccer ball at his feet and an expression of such raw hope that Sarah had to look away. He'd brought a picnic basket, sandwiches, fruit, juice boxes, and a worn photo album that he'd clearly been carrying for years. You came, Emma said, launching herself at him with the same inexplicable certainty she'd shown at the mall. I told you I would, Michael replied, catching her and spinning her around until she shrieked with laughter. I'm a man of my word now. That's part of being in recovery, learning to keep your promises. They spread a blanket on the grass, and Michael opened the photo album with trembling hands. These are pictures of my family, he explained to the twins who pressed close on either side. Your grandparents, my mom and dad. They died in a car accident when I was 19, which is part of why I spiraled so badly. But they would have loved you both so much. Emma traced her finger over a photo of a woman with her same brown eyes and wide smile. She looks like me, she whispered. She does, Michael agreed, his voice thick with emotion. You have her smile and her stubbornness. And Ethan, you have my father's nose. See that little bump right there? That's a Thompson family trait. For 3 hours, they existed in a bubble separate from the rest of the park. Michael played soccer with Ethan, both of them tripping over the ball and laughing at their mutual lack of coordination. He pushed Emma on the swings until she demanded to go higher, so high that Sarah's heart climbed into her throat. He helped them climb the jungle gym, spotting them with careful hands, learning their personalities through play. Sarah watched from the blanket, her emotions a tangled mess of resentment, hope, grief, and something that might have been forgiveness trying to take root. She pulled out her phone and recorded a video of Michael helping Ethan across the monkey bars, the boys' delighted squeals echoing across the playground. When the twins finally exhausted themselves and collapsed on the blanket, demanding sandwiches, Michael sat beside Sarah with careful distance between them. Thank you, he said quietly. For this, for letting me meet them. They're remarkable kids, Sarah replied, watching Emma try to feed a piece of sandwich to a brave squirrel. And they deserve to know their father. But Michael, I need you to understand something. I'm not ready to let my guard down. It's going to take time, maybe a lot of time, for me to trust you again. I understand, he said, and I'll wait, however long it takes. As weeks turned into months, a tentative rhythm developed. Michael showed up every Saturday without fail, rain or shine, sickness or health. He attended Emma's school play, sitting in the back row but cheering louder than anyone when she delivered her 3 lines as tree number 2. He coached Ethan's soccer team when the regular coach quit unexpectedly, learning the rules from YouTube videos the night before practice. He brought Sarah coffee on mornings when she worked double shifts, leaving it on her doorstep with no expectation of being invited inside. He attended co-parenting classes at the community center, taking notes in a worn notebook and implementing every suggestion with religious devotion. He opened a savings account for the twins' college education and contributed every spare dollar from his counselor's salary. But it wasn't perfect. There were moments when Ethan would cry for no apparent reason, and Sarah would find him curled in his bed whispering, "What if he leaves again?" There were times when Emma's teacher called about behavioral issues, acting out, picking fights, that Sarah recognized as the child processing abandonment she'd experienced before she was even born. Michael met these challenges head-on. When Ethan voiced his fears, Michael showed up at their house with a sleeping bag and asked if he could camp on the living room floor, just to prove I'm not going anywhere. When Emma struggled, he took her to therapy sessions and sat in the waiting room doing homework from his own counseling certification program, learning how to help children process trauma. 6 months after the mall reunion, Sarah found herself genuinely smiling at one of Michael's terrible dad jokes. 8 months in, she invited him to stay for dinner after he dropped the twins off from their Saturday adventure. 10 months later, she asked him to help her fix the broken porch railing, and they spent an entire afternoon working side by side while the twins played in the yard. "I'm not saying I've forgiven you," Sarah told him one evening as they sat on that newly repaired porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. "But I think I'm getting there, and that terrifies me." Michael set down his beer, non-alcoholic, always non-alcoholic. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because if I forgive you, if I let myself trust you again, I'm vulnerable," Sarah admitted. "The last time I was vulnerable with you, you shattered me. I don't know if I can survive that again." "You won't have to," Michael said with quiet certainty. "Sarah, I can't promise I'll never make mistakes or that I'll always get it right. But I can promise that I will never ever abandon you or the twins again. I would rather die than put you through that pain a second time." The twins burst through the screen door at that moment, covered in grass stains and demands for ice cream. Michael laughed and scooped them both up, one under each arm, carrying them inside while they shrieked with joy. Sarah followed slowly, watching this man who'd broken her heart slowly, painstakingly earn his way back into their family. A year after the mall incident, the 4 of them stood in a courtroom. Michael had petitioned for joint custody, and after months of evaluations, interviews, and supervised visits, the judge was ready to render a decision. Sarah held Emma's hand on one side and Ethan's on the other, while Michael stood slightly apart, his knuckles white from gripping the defense table. "Mr. Thompson," the judge began, a stern woman in her 60s who'd seen every family configuration imaginable. "I've reviewed your history, your recovery documentation, and the reports from the child psychologist. I've also spoken privately with Emma and Ethan." Michael's jaw clenched. Sarah felt her heart hammering against her ribs. "The court recognizes the severity of your past actions," the judge continued. "Abandoning a pregnant partner is not something to be taken lightly. However, the court also recognizes genuine rehabilitation in the best interests of the children involved. Emma and Ethan have both expressed clear desire to have their father in their lives, and Ms. Williams has testified to your consistent presence and reliability over the past year." The judge looked directly at Michael. "I'm granting you joint custody with a structured visitation schedule. You will continue attending your recovery meetings, you will submit to random drug testing for the next 2 years, and you will maintain your current employment or notify the court of any changes. Do you understand these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor," Michael said, and Sarah heard tears in his voice. Thank you. Thank you so much." The twins erupted in cheers, causing the bailiff to shoot them a stern look that Emma completely ignored. They rushed to Michael, who dropped to his knees and wrapped them in his arms, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sarah stood back, allowing them this moment. She caught Michael's eye over the twins' heads, and something passed between them. Acknowledgement, gratitude, in the first fragile threads of something that might eventually become love again. Outside the courthouse, they took a family photo at Emma's insistence. Michael held Ethan while Sarah held Emma, the four of them squished together on the courthouse steps with matching grins. It wasn't a traditional family photo. There was too much history, too much pain still being processed. But it was real, and it was theirs. And it was a start. That evening, Michael came to the house for a celebration dinner. He'd brought ingredients for his specialty, terrible but well-intentioned spaghetti, and Emma helped him in the kitchen while Ethan set the table with exaggerated care. Sarah watched from the doorway, still not quite believing this was her life. "Mommy," Emma called, waving a sauce-covered spoon. "Daddy says you have to taste this and tell him if it needs more garlic." Daddy. The word hung in the air like a bell. It was the first time either twin had used it naturally, without prompting or self-consciousness. Michael froze, his eyes widening, seeking Sarah's permission even now. She nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. "Well, come on then," Emma insisted, completely oblivious to the emotional earthquake she just triggered. "The sauce isn't going to taste itself." They ate dinner as a family, the conversation flowing easily between school gossip, Michael's stories about his recovery work, and the twins' elaborate plans for their upcoming 8th birthday party. When the twins finally went to bed, a process involving 3 stories, 2 glasses of water, and 1 existential question about whether fish sleep with their eyes open. Michael helped Sarah clean up the kitchen. "They called me Daddy," he said softly, scrubbing a plate with more attention than it required. "I heard," Sarah replied, drying dishes and putting them away. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," Michael admitted. "Amazing. Like I've been given something infinitely precious, and I'm constantly afraid I'll break it." "Welcome to parenting," Sarah said with a slight smile. "That feeling never goes away. You just learn to function despite it." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, and when Michael prepared to leave, Sarah walked him to the door. He paused on the threshold, backlit by the porch light, looking younger than his 31 years. "Sarah," he began, then stopped, struggling with words. I know I'm not. What I mean is, I'm grateful for everything, for this chance, for your forgiveness, even if it's incomplete, for our children. Just thank you." "Michael," Sarah said, and on impulse reached out to squeeze his hand briefly. "You earned this, every bit of it. The man who left me couldn't have done what you've done this past year, but you're not that man anymore." His eyes shone in the porch light. "I'm trying not to be." "I know," she said. "We all see it, especially them." 2 years after the mall reunion, Michael and Sarah sat in the bleachers of Ridgeview Elementary School, watching the twins participate in the 3rd grade talent show. Emma was performing a piano piece she'd learned specifically for this event, while Ethan was doing magic tricks he'd been practicing for months. "Remember when we used to come to places like this together?" Michael asked quietly, so the other parents couldn't hear. "When we were dating, we'd crash elementary school events just to laugh at the terrible acts. We were such jerks," Sarah replied with a small laugh. "Young and stupid and convinced we knew everything." "I was young and stupid," Michael corrected. "You were young and hopeful and saw the best in everyone. That's different." Emma took the stage, her fingers trembling slightly as she placed them on the piano keys. She glanced into the audience, seeking her parents' faces, and when she found them both sitting together, her smile blazed like sunshine. She played beautifully, only missing 2 notes that probably no one else noticed. When Ethan performed his magic tricks, including one involving a disappearing coin that actually worked, Michael cheered so loudly that Ethan turned bright red and took an exaggerated bow. Afterward, they took the twins for ice cream at their favorite shop. The 4 of them crowded into a booth discussing the show's highlights. "Did you see when Tommy forgot his lines?" Emma giggled around a mouthful of mint chocolate chip. "He just stood there for like a whole minute." "That's not nice, Em," Sarah chided gently. "Being on stage is scary." "You weren't scared, though, were you?" Michael asked, and Emma shook her head confidently. "Nope, because you were both there," she said simply, as if this explained everything. "I knew even if I messed up, you'd still think I was good." Ethan nodded agreement, his face smeared with chocolate. That's what parents do. They think you're awesome even when you're not. Oh, you're both definitely awesome, Michael assured them. Even when you're leaving your rooms looking like disaster zones. The twins laughed, and Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. A loosening of the last tight bands of protective anger she'd wrapped around her heart. She'd spent so long being both parents, shouldering every responsibility alone, that she'd forgotten what partnership looked like. But here, in this mundane moment of post-talent show ice cream, she remembered. Later that night, after Michael had gone home to his apartment and the twins were asleep, Sarah sat in her bedroom looking at the photo from the courthouse steps 2 years ago. Four people trying to figure out how to be a family, their smiles uncertain but real. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Ethan wants to know if I can come to his soccer game Thursday afternoon. I can probably get coverage at work if it's okay with you. She typed back without hesitation. Of course it's okay. You're his father. Three little dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, sometimes I still can't believe that's true, that I get to be their father, that you let me. Sarah stared at the message for a long time before responding. You didn't let yourself be their father before, because you weren't ready. Now you are. That matters. Does it matter enough? Michael texted back. She understood what he was really asking. Whether his past could truly be forgiven, whether he'd ever stop being the man who abandoned his family, whether redemption was actually possible. She thought about them all, about two children who somehow recognized their father in a crowd of strangers. She thought about every Saturday for 2 years, every therapy session, every soccer game, and school play. She thought about how Ethan slept better on nights when Michael tucked him in, how Emma's behavioral issues had almost entirely resolved. Yes, she finally typed, it matters enough. On the twins' 9th birthday, Michael threw them a party at his new house, a modest 3-bedroom in a good school district that he'd saved for relentlessly. It was the first time the twins would spend an entire weekend at Dad's house, a milestone they'd been working toward for months. The party was chaotic and perfect. 20 kids running through the backyard, a bounce house that Michael had spent 3 hours inflating, and a cake that Sarah and Michael had decorated together the night before. They'd stood in his kitchen arguing good-naturedly about frosting colors, and somewhere between the blue and the green, their hands had touched. Neither of them pulled away immediately. Sarah, Michael had said softly, his voice carrying years of hope and fear, I don't want to rush you or push for something you're not ready for, but I need you to know. I never stopped loving you, even at my worst, even when I was too broken to deserve you, I never stopped. She'd looked at their hands, still touching over the mixing bowl. I don't know if I can love you the way I did before, she'd admitted. That girl, she's gone. The person I am now, she's harder, more cautious. She doesn't give second chances easily. I don't want you to be that girl, Michael had replied. I want you to be exactly who you are now. This incredible woman who raised two amazing children alone, who built a career and a life from nothing, who's strong enough to let someone who hurt her try to make amends. If you can love that person I'm trying to be, the person I'm fighting every day to become, that's more than I ever dreamed of having. Now watching him orchestrate musical chairs with military precision, while Emma and Ethan shrieked with laughter, Sarah felt her carefully constructed walls finally, fully crumble. She pulled out her phone and texted him, even though he was 20 feet away. When everyone leaves, we should talk. He checked his phone immediately, his eyes finding hers across the crowded backyard. He nodded once, and Sarah saw everything she needed in that single gesture. Hope, fear, determination, and love that had somehow survived 8 years of separation and pain. After the last guest left and the twins crashed on the couch watching a movie, their sugar highs finally depleting into exhaustion, Sarah and Michael sat on his back porch. The evening air was warm with late spring promise, and somewhere a neighbor was grilling, the smell of charcoal mixing with fresh-cut grass. I'm scared, Rosanna, Sarah began without preamble. I'm absolutely terrified of letting you all the way back in. Because if you leave again, if you break their hearts or mine, I don't think any of us will recover. I'm not leaving, Michael said with absolute certainty. Sarah, I've been in recovery long enough to know what triggers look like, what relapse warning signs are. I have a sponsor I talk to every day. I go to meetings 3 times a week. I built a life around stability and consistency. But more than that, I have 2 children who need me and a woman I never stop loving. Those are better than any addiction treatment program in the world. Love doesn't cure addiction, Sarah said, because she'd learned that lesson the hard way. No, it doesn't, Michael agreed, but it gives you something worth staying sober for. And I wake up every single morning grateful for another day clean, another day I get to be their father, and hopefully, someday, your partner again. Sarah looked at him, really looked, the way she hadn't allowed herself to in 8 years. The boy she'd loved was gone, replaced by a man who'd been broken and had painstakingly reassembled himself into something stronger. His hands bore scars from his years on the street. His eyes carried shadows from battles she couldn't imagine. But there was also peace there, the hard-won peace of someone who'd faced their demons and come out alive. Okay, she heard herself saying, let's try, slowly, carefully, with the twins as our priority. But let's try. Michael's face transformed, years of grief and regret giving way to pure joy. He reached for her hand tentatively, and when she didn't pull away, he wove his fingers through hers. They sat like that as the sun set, 2 broken people who'd found their way back to each other through the instinctive love of 2 children in a crowded mall. 5 years after that day at Westfield Mall, the Thompson-Williams family gathered for Emma and Ethan's 12th birthday party. Michael and Sarah had been remarried for 6 months, a small ceremony in their backyard, with just the twins and their closest friends. Sarah wore a simple blue dress, and Michael cried through his vows, and Emma and Ethan served as joint best man and maid of honor. The twins were now in 7th grade, tall and gangly, Emma with her father's height and her mother's determination, Ethan with his father's quiet thoughtfulness and his mother's emotional intelligence. They told the story of meeting their father at the mall constantly, embellishing it until Michael had been a homeless stranger they'd rescued, rather than a well-dressed man shopping for work clothes. Tell the real story, Sarah would insist, but the twins preferred their version. On this particular birthday, as they cut the cake and opened presents, Emma pulled Michael aside. Dad, she said seriously, using the name that had become second nature over the years. Do you remember when we hugged you at the mall? Every single day, Michael replied honestly. It's the moment my real life started. Why do you think we did it? Emma asked. Ethan and I have talked about it a lot, and we don't really remember deciding to. We just had to. Michael considered this, looking at his daughter who was growing into a remarkable young woman. I think, he said slowly, that love recognizes itself. Even when we don't know it consciously, something in us responds to the people we're meant to be connected to. You and your brother felt that connection before your brains could explain it. That's kind of beautiful, Emma said. Also kind of weird. Most beautiful things are, Michael agreed, pulling her into hugs she still willingly accepted at 12. I'm grateful every day for your weirdness and beauty, kiddo. That night, after the twins went to bed and the house was quiet, Sarah and Michael sat on their porch now, in the house they'd bought together. Michael's 4-year sobriety chip sat in a small frame on the mantel, next to photos documenting their impossible journey from separation to reunion to family. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't hugged you that day? Sarah asked, her head resting on Michael's shoulder. If we just walked past each other? Every day, Michael admitted. And then I stopped wondering because it doesn't matter. What matters is that they did hug me, and you gave me a chance I didn't deserve, and somehow we made this work. We made this work, Sarah repeated, tasting the words. Not somehow. Through a lot of hard work, therapy, mistakes, forgiveness, and more hard work. True, Michael agreed. Nothing about this has been easy. But it's been worth it, Sarah said, and it wasn't a question. Every single day, Michael replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Every single day it's worth it. Inside, Emma and Ethan were probably still awake, whispering to each other in the darkness the way twins do, planning their next adventures and discussing their parents with the brutal honesty of 12-year-olds. They would grow up knowing their father, knowing he'd fought to be there, knowing that love could be lost and found and fought for. They would grow up understanding that people could change, that redemption was possible, that mistakes didn't define you forever. They would carry the story of the mall reunion with them for the rest of their lives, telling it to friends and partners, and eventually their own children. The story of how they found their father in a crowd of strangers, guided by an instinct they couldn't name, but trusted anyway. And maybe, years from now, when they face their own impossible situations, they would remember that sometimes the heart knows what the mind hasn't yet figured out. That love is worth fighting for, even when it's hard. That family isn't just biology or proximity, but choice and commitment and showing up every single day, even when it's painful. The Thompson-Williams family sat together on their porch as the stars emerged overhead, living proof that broken things can be mended, that absence can become presence, that strangers can become family in the time it takes two 7-year-olds to cross a mall corridor and follow their hearts. In the end, that's all any of us can hope for: the courage to follow our instincts, the grace to forgive the unforgivable, and the wisdom to recognize love even when it appears in the most unexpected forms, standing alone in a crowded shopping mall, waiting to be found.